Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
I am a huge fan of our guest today and the team he represents. Tom Telesco enters his 11th season as general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers. Before joining the Chargers, Tom spent 15 NFL seasons with the Indianapolis Colts as the director of scouting and player personnel and vice president of football operations. Tom shares with us how he got into football and what a day in the life of an NFL general manager looks like. He dives deep into team dynamics, culture, and player updates. Tom also offers leadership ideas through the lens of leading a football organization that translates to any business relying on people working together with a common purpose. And for the first time ever, Tom openly shares which social justice message would be on his helmet if he were playing football these days and how we could all make a collective difference together. Enjoy the show. Welcome, Tom Telesco. Hey, it's great to see you again. Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This will be fun.
Yeah, it will be. I really appreciate you taking the time. Love to really hear more about what's going on from you about the team, see how it's going with some of the players. I certainly would love to dig into to learn more about your role, as the general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers. And maybe we'll have some fun with some personal questions. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Let's hit it.
Awesome. So what's the team up to these days, and how's the team looking so far?
It's not like college football where they get like spring practice where you get out in pads and you can kind of hit and do some scrimmaging. So, NFL is a little bit different, but we get a small group of like light practices essentially on the field with the whole team, just some individual work, some drill work, some special teams. And then we do some 7-on-7 work. We don't do any 11-on-11 work, but it's a great time of the year really for our younger players that have to learn our system, learn our scheme, learn our playbook. And just get some really good teaching and development work. Our veterans are here too. Now, first of all, this is voluntary, but almost everybody's here. But, for our veterans, they use it to kind of just stay in shape in the off season. They know the playbook. They kind of know the installation of offense and defense, especially. But for the younger guys, it's really good work. They kind of get them ready for training camp, especially for our rookies that are coming from college to professional level. And really for those guys, it's trying to get them to learn like how we practice, what our meetings are like, learn all the terminology. And this is a big education period for them. And then when we come to training camp, it kind of flips from education to competitive, where they have to come in and you got to win a role, win a spot on the team, win a spot on the practice squad, earn a role on the 53-man roster. So, and that's where jobs are kind of won and lost in training camp. But we try and get the guys prepared right now. So when they come into camp, they're not thinking as much. You can kind of let your abilities take over.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen a couple of videos online, and Coach Staley's out there really encouraging the new players, getting folks out there and making sure everybody's running. I think that's one of the secrets, right? Got to be in shape, better shape than the other team.
Yeah, and that's, part of practice. If you practice with a good enough tempo, you don't have to do a lot of conditioning after practice. So you shouldn't have to. Yeah. So we try and practice, especially on defense. If everyone just runs the football, you can kind of get your work in, your conditioning work in. Same with the offense. Quarterbacks don't run a whole lot during their normal practice, so they got to do some conditioning. But if you get out there for an hour and a half with like a high tempo sense of urgency, it's not only a football workout, but it's also like a conditioning workout for your body. So that's we try and knock both of those off at the same time.
Yeah, it's one of the critical things I imagine for making the run for the season. And I see the Chargers, as you know, I'm a huge fan.
That's why I came on
here. I believe you guys are a contender, right? One of the, I'd say, top 8 to 10 teams that are really have a good chance at getting to the Super Bowl. And I imagine every team has aspirations every year. You enter, and hey, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're making the playoffs, and congrats again, making it last year to the playoffs. What are some of the keys you and Coach Staley and some of the other folks are talking about that are really critical this year? Obviously, everybody's got to stay healthy. When you take that aside, what are some of the key elements you think are going to be needed for this year's run?
It's always interesting. Every year is unique and new. So there's usually not a lot of carryover from one year to the next. The football season, as opposed to all other sports, our off season is the longest in professional sports. Baseball seasons are longer, so their off season is very small. Basketball is longer than we are. Football, our off season is, really from, depending on when you end, we ended in January, and then we don't start up again until August 1st. So you don't get a lot of momentum really from one year to the next. We had a pretty good year last year, but lost in the playoffs to Jacksonville. sometimes even hard to, we lost to Jacksonville in a very difficult way, if you remember. For some people that stays in the back of your head as you move into next year. Some guys kind of, wash it out and move on and kind of clean out and move on to the next season. But every NFL team, there's roughly about a 30% turnover of your roster every year. So a lot of the offseason is getting your new players indoctrinated into your program, whether it's a rookie, a first-year player, or even a veteran. Like we signed Eric Kendricks this year from the Vikings, 10-plus year vet in the NFL, but he's new to us. He's new to our program, new to our city, or new to the Chargers, and new to our defense. So a lot of this offseason is trying to get ready for next year and getting our new guys ready to go. And then for us, we have a new offensive coordinator this year in Kellen Moore. So the offense will change a little bit. The terminology will change a little bit. So our offensive side of the ball, the meetings are going through right now, all the way from Quentin Johnston, our rookie, to Keenan Allen. Like they're all learning right now because it's a little bit new. And then defensively, Brandon Staley really runs the defense, but we have a new defensive coordinator in Derek Ansley. And so there's a new voice in front of the room on defense. So, a lot of it is just getting ready for next year. And every team's going through the same process. Like I said, as we get to camp, injuries are important. You're not going to avoid them. You try to mitigate the risk by having as strong a roster as you can going in, knowing you're going to have to maybe, make your way through the season with some players that have to step up and play bigger roles you didn't expect. It happens every year. But it's a fun part of the process as you build the team, to kind of build a team in the offseason and get ready for the 17+ week grind as we start in training camp.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of new thinking and probably build out some of the strengths you already have in place and bringing new talents and new ideas. And I always think about culture and the importance of having people come together and really be a big family and work together. And how's that coming together? How does that form and reshape every year? And do you have folks that are generally just, I would say, leaders, or maybe the heart and soul of the team that can help gel that faster for the group?
Yeah, that's what a lot of OTAs are about, which is great because it is voluntary. This is not mandatory for players to be here in the off season, really from mid-April all the way till mid-June. But when you have about 98% of the players here, this is where your team building begins right now, is the players being around each other in the locker room, in the weight room, in the meeting rooms, on the practice field, spending time together. And that's where that culture starts to build. I mean, the head coach and general manager, you can kind of set the culture a little bit. You can also kind of set it by the type of players you bring in. But after that, the players kind of take over. And really, we need to have them kind of take the team over. And that's what the veterans do, on both sides of the ball. We have Corey Lindsley, who's our center. Your centers are typically like the quarterback of the offense. But, he's a big leader for us. And you flip to the other side, Derwin James is, he's such a, not only is he a leader for us, but he's a guy that everybody wants to play with. He has so much energy and enthusiasm. Those are just two guys, but that's how things start. And then, like you said about watching some of the videos of OTAs, when you see the enthusiasm of the coaches on both sides of the ball and the players practicing, that's that team building that kind of takes place on a day-by-day basis. You may not see it until late November at a crunch time where a player's got to rely on the player next to him to make a play. And some of that culture goes back to May or June, about doing the same things over and over again on the practice field. And it comes up in November, December, the key games. So, but yeah, this is a big team building time this time, and then training camp. And then, you let it rip starting in September.
I think it's great that the veterans are there. To your point about, building up the team, and with the folks that you mentioned, they are pretty energetic guys, pretty enthusiastic. They just exude it as they're playing, and you can just tell on the field. It's great to have those leaders there. I mean, I think it's so important, and I do agree with you that I think when it gets tough, when the grind is hitting, you got to get this win or you got to make this play. Really being there, I think is so critical. And I certainly have seen Staley out there shaking hands, and you're out there, and as you said about setting the culture, is there some type of, when you say setting, what does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of it's just how we interact and how we treat people around us. We want the players to feel the same way. And, this is it's a sports team. So you're used to being close with each other and used to playing next to each other. Part of this process, what you saw is we want people to enjoy coming to work, which is difficult to do because professional football is a very difficult game to play. There's a lot of pressures involved. There's obviously playing football. There's physical health that's involved. But we want guys to have fun when they get here. And usually if you see that enthusiasm on the field, that kind of carries over. The guys they want to be here. They want to be part of it. They want to be a part of something special. But as far as kind of building the culture, a lot of it's just how you treat people, and make sure we listen to our players. I mean, I tell our guys all the time, like, I do not have all the answers, not by far. Now, I might have the most experience in the building, which is kind of odd because I'm used to always being the young guy with what I do. And I'm not so much the young guy anymore. We got a lot of coaches, and obviously all the players are a lot younger than I am, but to get feedback from the right people about what we're doing, what do you like, what you don't like, what we can fix. So that's a big part of the process, to kind of have our players involved in that process, and our coaches too. Our coaching staff is 20 plus people. I want to make sure everybody has a voice and an opinion on how we do things, and just make sure you listen to people. Now, in the end, a lot of times someone has to make a decision. It may not always be the most popular decision in the world, but you feel like it's the best thing you can do for the team. But when you talk about team, like, I've been on a team every year since I was probably, 6, 7, 8 years old up until now. There's nothing better than being on a team every day with a group of players. So, but setting that culture, a lot of it just comes from the people above, how you treat people.
Yeah, I love that. Especially how you're including people, getting their perspective, listening, taking it all in, making some of the tough calls. I love all that. As you think about being a general manager, I think you wear a lot of hats. I've heard you talk about different things you cover, and you have a lot of people you're working with closely. Can you just give us a very quick high-level view, like day in the life of Tom Telesco as a general manager? What does that look like?
I guess, one of the fun parts of the job is so many things come up in the course of the day that when you walked in the building in the morning, you never thought was going to happen. It's kind of the nature of the job. General manager, I generally manage a lot of people. It's really essentially what it is. And it's, I was talking to a group of actually young flag football players. And one of the kids asked me, what do you do? Because I told him, like, I'm not a player, I'm not a coach. And I just said, like, there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of people in professional football that aren't players or coaches. And really anybody who affects the team, who can touch the team as we build the team, really is really kind of what I'm responsible for. So, and it could be anything from, our athletic training room that takes care of our players, our team doctors that take care of our players, our equipment room that has to have our players all equipped every day for practice and everything ready for the practice field. We have a grounds crew that has to keep this grass like in tip-top shape every single day, 365 days a year. We have a video staff that videos every single practice from multiple angles, puts it all here on our computer behind me, has it all, I can filter 1,000 different things to watch different plays. They film all the games. So you got all these different departments. And then we have departments that have to, like you watch on social media, that kind of cover us and kind of show the fans what's going on. Mm-hmm. Kind of show our players as more than just football players when they take the helmet off. So, the GM's job, I think everyone looks at it as it's the guy who drafts the players. And that's obviously a big part of the job, but it may be maybe 25% of what the GM actually has to do. I mean, I'm constantly interacting with our coaching staff, constantly interacting with our training staff on player injuries, and kind of have to have a big picture view of the team, not just this year, but in future years, and which includes, cap and contracts and budgets and that sort of thing. So the scouting part is the most fun part of the job, but it ends up being the smaller part of the job. And we have a pretty large scouting staff that does a lot of work for us, gives me a lot of information to help make decisions. And, but really in reality, like, it's more of a leadership and decision-making job more so than an actual scouting job. And that's just the nature of probably, I'm sure, every sport, baseball, basketball, hockey, and football, is you hire the right people, kind of give them a vision, and then they give you back information, and then you try and make a call and try and make a decision on it and move on from there.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. And as you talk about scouting, you guys recently signed an XFL standout there. Is that something you were scouting, or the group was scouting? It seems like he's got some good potential.
Yeah, our pro staff this time of year, since there's no there's no NFL games going on, we'll scout the XFL, scout the USFL, which is going on right now. The CFL is starting up relatively soon, I think. I'm trying to think. Yeah, they're actually starting up real soon. So they're responsible for really all professional football players. So our guys kind of, they did reports and all the players in both the XFL and the USFL. And we're looking for another receiver that had some return ability, both as a punt and kickoff returner. And Darius Shepard was a player that we had seen in our league already. Had played with Green Bay, had played with Denver last year, but had a really nice season in the XFL as a returner. And, the staff recommended him to me, and I'm like, well, we can use a receiver. So we signed him and brought him in. And, it's not always like the first round draft picks or the big money free agents that, can contribute to winning. Sometimes it's the smaller little moves you make. A couple of years ago, we had signed Donald Parham as a tight end out of I believe it was the XFL. I don't know if it was the XFL. who had a really nice season there. We saw him just maybe go to training camp with us, see how it goes. And he's been here for 2 years, going on 3 years. He's a pretty big role player for us. So wherever you can find players, we need to go there. So that our guys do a great job with that.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said about the draft, that's a big part of your role and the team's role. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the draft. I mean, you have Quentin Johnston, who was the first pick, and I know there's a couple other wide receivers right behind him. Just curious, what was standing out to you and the team about Quentin on your draft board?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about first-round draft picks is they usually have a lot of positive qualities to them. I mean, more than it's just the way the draft is. I mean, the more positive qualities you have, you get drafted a little bit higher. The players down at the bottom part of the draft don't have as many things to hang their hat on, but doesn't mean they're not going to become a starter in this league. But with Quentin, I mean, first of all, he's big, he's strong, and he's fast. So, I mean, sometimes we overcomplicate things. You got a big receiver who's real strong, real fast. Well, we can work something with that. So, but his physical ability is excellent. But what we really liked is his work ethic, his accountability, how much he puts into it, how much he loves the game of football. He's still really young. He's like 20. I think he just turned 21 years old. So, but he's very mature for his age. He has some self-awareness about where he is with his game. We were just really lucky to add a player like him to our offense, give us some explosive ability on offense. We're just really lucky to have it. It was a really strong draft in term this year, especially at some skill position spots, receiver, tight end, even a couple of running backs. But he really stood out to us really from the beginning of the process to the end. And that's kind of how it worked out.
Yeah, that's great. I also like the fact that you got a couple of his teammates too coming on board. He's going to feel at home right away. Yeah,
it's funny how that happens. I mean, the other funny thing is Orange County out here has a lot of TCU alumni, which I didn't realize till a couple of years ago. There's just a lot of kids that go to TCU from out here. There's a lot of alumni. So I've had more people stop me on the street asking about the 3 TCU kids we drafted this year than probably any time we've drafted players, including Justin Herbert. Of course, Justin we drafted during a pandemic, so I really wasn't out on the street too much. But yeah, so we drafted another receiver from TCU, Darius Davis, number one to be a really good returner for us. Hopefully, both punts and kicks. He's extremely fast. Try and give us a little bit more home run ability in both those categories we haven't had here in a long time. And in the 7th round, we're looking at some players that may have, 1 or 2 things, 1 or 2 traits to have that think they have a chance to make it in this league. And if you'd seen Max Duggan play this year, I mean, it's hard to walk away and not say, hey, that's a guy I really want on this football team. His football intelligence is off the charts. He's a quick processor, and he's just tough as nails. And had a huge career at TCU, both as a thrower and a runner. He's a great leader. So we're going to give him an opportunity to come in here and, try and make the team.
Yeah, he seems pretty gritty. I really like how he fights. My son and I were talking about that. We thought that he'd be a good backup as part of the team. And, maybe you throw him out there for some runs or some option play there. He's just tough.
You never know. Yeah, he really is. He's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, that's really cool. Hey, as far as, other players, certainly, there's free agency. And I know the team has looked at some safeties too. I think John Johnson from Cleveland. Are you guys still pursuing him? Or are you guys still pursuing safety? Or are you feeling you're pretty good based on what you're seeing in OTAs?
Yeah, we felt pretty good with our secondary really coming out of last year. And knock on wood, we should have JC Jackson back sooner than later this year in training camp. So we think it's a good group. You're not going to have, grizzled veterans at every single position on both sides of the ball. So you're going to have to rely on some younger, inexperienced players to play bigger roles. And that's really, as we build the team, as we go into the kind of second part of the Justin Herbert era, the makeup of the team has to change a little bit, just because of the salary cap. And, I've been through this before with when Phillip Rivers was here earlier in my career. And then when I was with the Colts with Peyton Manning, you do have to build a team a little bit differently. It's a good problem to have when you have a franchise quarterback who makes a lot of money. It means you got a really good one that you can win a Super Bowl with. But the makeup of the team does have to change a little bit. And that's going to have some younger players at some positions that we got to really develop. We have to scout well and we have to develop well and get guys ready to play early on. So we've got a couple guys like that right now. And this team will transition next couple of years. It's not going to go 100% young because we can still mix it with a mixture of veterans and younger players, not necessarily all rookies, but younger players. But we have some guys in the secondary that we really like. And we think the defense is, I love the scheme that we play. And it's a scheme that a lot of colleges play. So the transition for younger players, I think, is a little bit easier. But we're excited about the guys that we have right now.
With Justin, too, he's one of the best quarterbacks out there. He's a franchise QB. I believe he was pretty close to the top of your board, I think, during the draft a few years ago. I don't think it was one of those rumors out there that people are talking about. I don't know if you can weigh in on that. And also, I know he's got a big contract coming up. How's that going in general? I know you can't really get into details, but just curious how that's going.
Well, yeah, it's something that we get asked about a lot. The good thing is like he's under contract for this year and next year. So it'd be a little bit different if, say, he wasn't under contract at all right now. We got to make sure we get this done before camp starts. I probably feel a little bit differently. Stress level probably a little bit different, but it will get done at some point. But something that we can work on, on the back end. He's out there, he's throwing, he's with everybody, and he's playing. But yeah, we'd like to get something done long term, just so we have some known costs moving forward. It's going to be a big contract, obviously, but the sooner the better to get that done. When it gets done, I have no idea. Sometimes these things move quick. Sometimes they move at glacier pace. Sometimes you just never know. But what's great about him is he's really unaffected by anything. So the fact that he has a contract that is currently being negotiated, it really won't affect him at all. He just goes out there and plays, and we'll take care of it on the backside.
Yeah, he seems like a team guy, from what you could tell from my seat, which is very far away from any kind of connection with him. What's interesting too is, hey, you have all these talking heads that talk about your draft grades, and they talk about your decisions for free agency, or, I look at Justin Herbert, that ended up being an A+, 3 or 4 years later, which is great. So my question really is to you, how do you like part that noise? Do you just ignore it, not listen to it? Do you not watch any of these shows that talk about these things? Just curious, as a GM, do you look at that? Do you listen to any of that, or is that just more of a distraction?
Well, I don't listen to it on purpose, but at this day and age, sometimes you just can't help yourself. Yeah. You hear it somewhere, but I don't know if it's something I've just learned or developed. I have no idea, but I'm just unaffected by really anything that anybody says on the outside. It doesn't bother me at all, whether it's good or bad. And a lot of what you hear on the outside, it's really for entertainment purposes only. Yeah. Especially when it comes to the draft. I mean, people just don't know much about what teams are thinking about in the draft, but they have a lot of time to fill on TV. So, but yeah, when it comes to either praise or criticism, I may hear it. It goes in one ear, out the other. It's strictly performance-based business. We all know that coming in. You win, you're doing great. You lose, you won't be here very long. And it really doesn't matter what anybody says. So, but the one thing that we do, we try with our players, but it's just hard nowadays, is trying to get them, to not listen, which is impossible. So we don't even, so we used to say all the time, hey, don't listen to what people say, but it's almost ridiculous to even say that now. You just got to be able to handle it, which is not the worst thing in the world, because you kind of develop some toughness, some mental toughnness. And, people are going to say things you may not agree with. And with our players, everything they do, everybody sees. Every mistake they make, everybody sees. Yeah. If I, draft a player, assign a player, it doesn't work out, everybody sees it. Just the nature of the business. But I'm pretty much unaffected by it at this point. If you would ask me my first year as a GM, maybe I'd have a different answer. I can't even remember. I think my head was spinning my first year anyways as a GM, so I didn't have time to listen. Yeah. I'm kind of unaffected by it at this point.
Well, it is your 11th year, right? As the GM. Yeah, that's great. Even in business, where I've been for 30 years, it's something about being able to deflect, call it failure or mistakes, and really learn from them. And it's just, how do you take that and get better? How do you say we made progress? How do you make steps forward to do better next time? And I'm sure that applies. I would imagine it applies in your field and everything that's going on in the field, because you got to get up and you got to do it better next time, or you got to at least have the wherewithal to say, I got this, I'm going to do it better, and I got to do it for the team. And so it's really no different. And I got to tell you, people struggle with all this in business too, right? You get judged, or you get viewed. It's just not as public. Yeah. And we analyze all our mistakes all the time. Yeah. And it's funny, we probably spend much less focus on things we did right, and we spend a lot more focus on what we did wrong. But that's how we learn from it. And if you just talk about player acquisition, we're wrong probably 50% of the time, which is not great. It's not great odds. But, probably every move we make, if it doesn't work out exactly the way we anticipated, we'll go back and look at how we made that decision. What was the process like? Sometimes the process may be flawed and we make some changes. Sometimes the process was right. It just didn't work out. But we're constantly trying to learn from them, ask questions amongst ourselves, because it is a big decision-making business.
and where we can get better, how we can improve. And, the biggest thing is not making the same mistake twice.
Yeah, there's been, speaking of, I guess, a lot of activity out there, a lot of discussion about Austin Eckler, and very exciting that he's, looking to really contribute this year, right? I think that's staying up. But I also think it's great that you guys worked on some incentives. And my question in general for you is not directly about Austin, because I think he's obviously a wonderful part of the team, and you guys will figure out the details and figure out what makes sense for everybody. Just in general about incentives, what's your take on incentives in general for football?
Yeah, I mean, we use them a lot. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, you can say every player has a base salary, so you're paying somebody a base salary to say play wide receiver. So the second question would be, well, why should I pay you extra to produce? I'm already paying you to play, right? So I got to pay you extra if you have good production. So I'm already paying you a base salary. So, but incentives are just a way to get more money to the player for different production levels, and it's also a way for us, depending on how you do them, to have them not count on the salary cap this year. So some incentives that get earned, they may count against the cap in next year, but not this year. So that's one way to kind of try and get around that. But a lot of players have incentives in their contracts. A lot of individual incentives may be tied to a team incentive. So say you're a receiver and say you get $100,000 bonus for 58 or more catches, and the offensive production has to improve from last year to this year. And offensive production, you could use whatever. You could use yards, you could use rankings, whatever you want. But you try and tie maybe an individual incentive to a team incentive, because the worst thing in the world, and my dad used to always say this, even the worst basketball team on the planet has a leading scorer. So what you don't want to have is paying a player a lot of incentives for personal production on a team that's not very good. The incentive is to win, number one. And some of the incentives could be team incentives. Could be based on wins, could be based on making the playoffs, how many playoff wins. So there's a lot of different factors that go into a contract. In this particular case with Austin, we did add on some incentives, but a lot of veteran contracts usually have some sort of incentive somewhere, usually the bigger contracts do.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because I feel like you're pretty even keeled. As you mentioned, right? You've got the 11 years here with the Chargers, you're with the Colts before. And I feel like you're pretty balanced. Like I did hear you recently on the Rich Eisen show talking about Eckler, about, hey, you really love the guy, and you're in these contract negotiations, and it's like you're in this position, right? You're helping to run the team, you're trying to balance the budget, you're trying to do all these things. Like, how do you balance that? How do you balance really loving the guys and you're trying to keep it so you could actually stay within the cap and other things? Like how do you handle that?
Well, I do believe in my position, I think, at least for me, being balanced is a big part of the job. If I come in on a Monday morning after a loss with my head down, walking down the hallway and, kind of mumbling, everybody sees that. And that's it's poor leadership. And then the other side is I can't come in the building on a Monday morning after a win, jumping up and down like we won the Super Bowl. So I do like to stay even keel and make sure people see that wins or losses, we're on to the next game and we have another, something else to accomplish. And when it comes to player contract, player relations, it's probably the hardest part of the job because it is a hard salary cap. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do to manipulate a little bit, but at some point, whether in this year or next year, the year after, that whatever dollar you spend is going to be counted somewhere. So we have to account for all that. So, and when you're negotiating with the player and the player agent, in that particular moment, the player agent only cares about one person, and that's his player. Whereas we, on our end, we care about that player, but I also have 52 others I have to worry about as far as, every dollar I give you is one less dollar for somebody else. So you have to balance that at all times. And it does get difficult because players that you draft or sign right out of college, you kind of see them grow up with you. And guys that really produce for you on the field. I mean, these guys are warriors. They go on the field. I know they get paid a lot of money to do this, but they're going out there putting their bodies on the line to try and win games for you. You can't help to have some emotional ties to those players, but you also have the other side of it it's a team concept, and we have to make sure everybody's compensated as well as we can. So you try and do both. It's just difficult to do, but you do the best you can. You try and treat people the best you can. You give them some context of why you may not be able to do some things. Both sides may not agree on the why all the time, but at least you have your reasons why. You go from there. But yeah, it's an inexact science of trying to get there, which is why a lot of times as players, as they get older and they're veterans, a lot of times they have to go somewhere else to get paid a little bit more money because that team just runs into some issues. And just can't pay everybody. You do the best you can to keep the team together.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with Austin too, is an undrafted free agent, so it's just a good story. It just feeds into all the press, I'm sure, with all the questions. So good luck with that, and I look forward to see what happens there. Let's switch gears a little bit, Tom. I love to dig in personally. Love to understand more about, hey, how did you get into this business? Did you dream of being a general manager or playing football when you were a kid, or like how did you get here?
Yeah, it's so funny. So because I get so many resumes from kids who want to work in football, and most of them start with, I've wanted to be a GM since I was 10 years old. When I was a kid, I had no thoughts of being a GM. I don't even know if I knew what a GM was. I had no thoughts of ever working in the NFL. Didn't even know it was possible. Didn't know there were opportunities there. I was just a regular kid playing football, basketball, and baseball, and that was it. And then even when I went to college and played football in college, I didn't have any thoughts of actually working in the NFL. So I just got lucky. So I'm in college. I'm playing football at John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio. And it just so happened that the GM of the Buffalo Bills at the time, Bill Poley, and his kids went to my high school. And this is the early 90s. And they were looking for some college football players to come help at training camp in the summer. So you end up working about 4 or 5 or 6 weeks in the summertime. So they asked me if I would like to do that. And I said yes, only because 1, I was a huge Bills fan. And 2, I thought I could learn more about playing wide receiver. I could be a better player in college. I had no thoughts of, hey, maybe if I intern for the Bills, I'll get a job with them down the road or the NFL. I had no idea. I did that for 3 summers. And still at that point, I didn't really think about working in the NFL. I looked around, like the draft was big in the early 90s, but not the way it is now. And the scouts would be out at practice, and they're really, honestly, at that time, a lot of retired coaches. These guys were like 60, 70, 80 years old. They didn't look like me. I didn't, so I wasn't even thinking about being a scout. Didn't know there were any opportunities in the NFL. So I graduated from John Carroll with a business degree. I interviewed for some jobs in Cleveland in non-sports fields. And the GM of the Bills, Bill Poley, who had been fired by the Bills, was hired by the Carolina Panthers. And they were an expansion team. And he had to put a whole staff together, whole football operations staff from scratch. And that would happen to be the year I graduated from college. So I get a phone call and hey, look, we need some, kids basically to come down here and, go to work. You want to come down to work for the summer. So there were no guarantees. I said, yeah, let's go. So I packed up my car, drove down to Charlotte, and didn't know what I was going to be doing. And I just worked in a lot of different departments. Whatever came up and I would do it, whether it was roll the tarp over the practice field when it was going to rain, driving players to get x-rays and MRIs, picking up players at the airport when they came in to be signed. I did a lot of data entry. We were not as automated now as we were then, but did a lot of typing into databases, whether it's a scouting database, whether it's a coaching database, a lot of typing. And then I did a lot of tape cut-ups, which is a lot different than it is now. We actually had tapes that we put in decks, and we hit play and record. And then I would stop, and you're putting plays together for the coaches and the scouts. And I was just doing all these little jobs, and I was trying to do enough because once I was there, I was like, hey, I really would love to stay here, but I had no idea how long it was going to last. And honestly, nobody told me to go home. So I just kept coming into work. As soon as training camp ended, I just kept coming into work every day, like I was working there full time. And I think they kind of lost track that I was really just supposed to be there for the summer, but things would come up through the course of the day. And it was like, we didn't have a mail person. So the players are getting the stack of mail, like, well, who's going to pass this mail out in the locker room? Like, I'll do it. Which, by the way, that job took forever. Think about getting like 100, 200 pieces of mail for players. And the locker room is not in alphabetical order. So I'm walking around the locker room at night, throwing mail in lockers. But so I just did a little bit of everything, and then ended up in scouting, and, just kind of essentially just kind of worked my way up from there. So I was very lucky to get into it. Like I said, it wasn't something, it was not a dream to work in the NFL. I didn't know it was possible. So for me, it just kind of happened. But I did realize, like, it's hard to get an opportunity. So some of it's luck. But then once you get your foot in the door, like, you got to work really hard, or else in this business, they're going to find somebody else. If you can't contribute to winning, then they're going to find somebody else really fast. So I was always really focused on whatever job they gave me, do it as well as I could. I was never worried about promotions, moving up, getting a different job, like, whatever they gave me to do, I tried to do as hard as I could, because I knew in sports, you don't do it well, there'll be somebody else in my seat really fast. So
That's a great
my
story,
early story.
Tom. Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm sure each moment, each role, you're learning a little bit more about the game, right? You keep growing and building your skills on that. And it seems like that's developed even to the point where you're looking at all the film, as you mentioned, in your computer now, not cutting it up or splicing or taping.
Yeah. The X's and O's in football, like I learned that I had really great high school coaches. So all those X's and O's I learned in high school and in college. And then once I got to the Carolina Panthers, that's where I really started to learn, kind of the nuts and bolts of the NFL, how you build a team, how scouting works, how you describe a player. There's kind of an art to it for me to write up a scouting report that if you read that report, you haven't seen the player, that I can paint a picture in your head of what that player is. But a large part of scouting is kind of knowing, on the film, what the team, what the offense, defense, what they're trying to do. Like, if you're scouting out a corner and he gets beat, you really got to know what that coverage was. So before you start, dinging that corner on, was that his guy or not? And honestly, sometimes when I watch the tape, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you have to go ask you, because it gets complicated sometimes. And plus I'm not in the meetings, with like the Alabama corners that day and what they were asked to do. So, but yeah, having the X's and O's background from high school and college is helpful in my job. And then I was just thinking about this before. The thing that really helps me in my job now is when I came up kind of in the system, like I've done a lot of the work at the bottom part of the pyramid. So I can kind of, somewhat sympathize, but somewhat know what our interns are doing, what our scouting assistants are doing, what they are doing in the equipment room. I've never worked in an athletic training room. I don't have any medical background, but to kind of know what everybody's job responsibilities are and, how difficult those jobs are, because I'm responsible for those people. So, but yeah, as far as like the X's and O's of the game, I was really lucky to learn that before I even got to the NFL.
Yeah. You probably appreciate all the roles a little bit differently.
Yes. It's certainly the ones in football operations, all the grunt work you have to do, that it's really important to the whole process. We have some, essentially, we call them scouting assistants. They're kind of graduate assistants. They're kind of low man in the totem pole, but if they don't function at a high level, we can't function at all. So, we try and, prop those guys up as much as they can, because they work a lot of hours. They don't make a lot of money yet, but they do because they love it. And, want to be a part of a team just the same way I was when I started. Yeah,
it's really important to your thoughts there around everybody contributing at a high level. I kind of think about it as, hey, if everybody has this common purpose and belief, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl, or I often talk about in a different way to say, hey, when there's a mission to put somebody on the moon, folks that were working in NASA, people that were sweeping floors, cleaning up the place, they were saying, I'm doing this to help get somebody on the moon, right? It's like having that common mission. It's so important, and appreciating that everybody is contributing to that mission at hand is really, really important. And I think it's really, really cool that you actually have that awareness and understanding to be able to do that.
We talk about that a lot, the way you just said about, putting a man on the moon, and all the roles that people have. They're all important. They're just different. Our scouting assistant here that has to go pick up a player at the airport and bring him over here for a physical and then drive him around for an MRI. And, that stuff's important. It has to be done efficiently, it has to be done well. And that's just their role as part of this football team. And we all have them, and we all rely on each other. That's why it's fun being on a team. And I know it's probably the same way in business, but we all rely on each other. And in our business, it's our livelihoods. We have to win. If we don't win, there'll be other people in our chairs. So we really have to rely on each other and trust each other and be loyal to each other as far as how to get the job done.
And be all in, because everybody's got to contribute. There's no hiding out. Everybody's got to be all in and be seen, be heard. And at the end of the day, it's about mattering. That's what everybody's doing, right? We're contributing in a significant way that's going to create something that's awesome for all of us. And one of the things that connects to that a little bit, Tom, that I talk about is around equity and inclusion, diversity and belonging. There's some elements about my career that I've had to step in differently, and I talk about it quite a bit. One of the things that I thought was interesting with the NFL is about the social justice messages, right, on the back of the helmets. And I think there were 6 that they've allotted. And I think they've a couple of years ago they allowed a little bit more, and this year they added some more with Be Love and Choose Love. So There's a variety of them. So Tom, here's a question for you. If you wore a helmet, one of those messages, which one would you wear? Like there's end racism, stop hate, it takes all of us, Black Lives Matter, inspire change, say their stories, or maybe it's be love or choose love. Do one of those stand out for you if you were wearing a helmet on the field?
That's a great question. And I get a lot of questions in my job. No one has asked that before. I would probably choose inspire change because the platform that our players have may be unprecedented as far as the amount of people they can reach. And which is just a great testament to our game. I mean, it's America's game. Obviously it's past baseball. I mean, this is the game people in our country love. So the platform is big, and they have opportunities to use that platform for the good. So I would probably do inspire change, and I think that's that's a great question though. I like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I love inspire change to go. And I mean, it all starts with each of us, right? I think we all. Yeah. There's so many people I think are waiting for someone else to do it, or maybe are divisive in some way because of our word or this or that. And it's not, we all got to inspire change, and starts with us and how we could actually make an impact. So, I hope that it continues, the work with the NFL and other sports organizations. And I'm curious, Tom, is there anything else you wish was going on in this space with the NFL or just maybe sports in general? Just how do we continue to make progress here?
You know what? To me, it's the same thing as making progress with your actual team on the field as far as performance. So like individual improvement and individual change can lead to collective change, but we all have to do our parts in that. This can't be one person, and it can't just be one person just talking about it. It's got to have some action to it, which we've seen certainly in the last 5 years in our league, much more action, I think, rather than just talking about it. We've got a lot of different programs here. Some players do some things on their own individually outside of the team. Some players do some things with their team collectively with a group of players or a group of charities or whatever it is. But I think each individual does their part, at least to a big collective change. So it's no different than getting better as a team performance-wise. Same thing, same concept.
It is the same concept, collective change. I think it's well said. It's what we need to be thinking about as we're making the change, making sure it's not impacting or pushing somebody aside or impacting someone negatively. It's actually helping to rise and push the team up or push an organization to where you're all headed with a common perspective, right? Same deal, which is awesome.
Yeah. This is usually at the beginning of the year, I tell the players this, and then we do a meeting with players' wives, players' significant others, and then like our coaching staff's wives and significant others. Just to remind them, like we love the game of football. It's what we do for a living. It's really important to us, obviously, but it's not who we are. We still all have interests off the field. We have families, but football, since it's just the magnifying glass is on us so much, you got to remember that, these guys are more than just football players, more than just football coaches. There's more to that, being a great husband, being a great brother, being a great father. So that's all part of it. And this is what we do for a living. We love it, but it's not the most important thing we do. So, and a lot of our players, like I said, certainly in the last 5 years, have really taken to that and doing some great things off the field to kind of be there. But, sometimes we all need a reminder, some perspective in this business that the most important thing isn't getting a first down on 3rd and 1. Like there's bigger things out there, but it's big for us. It's what we do for a living. We love it, but we're more than just football people.
It's a bunch of high quality humans doing extraordinary things. And I think folks they want to focus on the extraordinary things. And if you haven't done it, then who are you type of thing. And the reality is hey, we're all human based. And I think it's a general theme that I think we need to make sure we're bringing humanity back into wherever we are in organizations, right? I think as we're going back to that change and really picking each other up, that's how it starts. And just, building that within the team, building it within the organizational structures, wherever we are. And Tom, you mentioned about your time with family. What do you do for fun outside of football?
I don't have a ton of hobbies. So, most of the time outside of football is with the kids. Well, I've got one in college now, so she's not as home as much, but we have 2 boys in high school. So, most of it revolves around them and their sports that they're playing. But this job, it kind of takes your life over. I'm used to it. This is all I've ever done. Since the day I left college until now, I've been lucky enough. I've just worked in the NFL. So I learned real fast what the hours were like, what the days were like. It's a 7-day-a-week job for a large part of the year. not right now, not this time of year, but a large portion of the year, it's 7 days a week. But so you just kind of get used to it. Honestly, sometimes if I get home early, I don't know what to do. You're kind of used to being on a rhythm in this job. And even during vacation, we take some vacation this summer. And there becomes a certain point where your body clock just says, you know what, it's time for training camp. Like I've been going to training camp every year since, as a player or in the NFL, since 1987 or 88, same time of the year. Like your body just tells you it's time to go to camp. So, but for me, it's just spending time with the family. That's kind of my hobby, other than working out a little bit. But this is an all-encompassing job. That's why I tell everybody that we hire or we're interviewing, like, you better have a passion for this, because if you don't, you're not going to last, because it's a hard job. So the people that are here, they really love what they do. If you don't love it, it's hard, it's a grind, and you just won't perform very well as a player, as a coach, as an administrator, as a scout, as anybody here. So if you're not all in, you just won't be as good. So I love what I do. I mean, I work in football. I mean, things could be a lot worse, being on a football team and working with a group of people. I've been really, really lucky.
Yeah. What one last question for you, Tom? What are you most excited about for the season ahead?
Just that's a new season that we can put last year behind us, and it's a new journey. Every year is a new journey. Even though we have a lot of players back from last year, it's a brand new team that has to grow together, and you get another chance, to try and go win a championship. And that's what we all do this for, is try and put a team together to win a championship. So for me last year, as soon as we lost, like, I couldn't wait for the playoffs to be over. I couldn't wait for the Super Bowl to be over so we can get on to the next season. So that's what we're excited about, is just kind of see how this team grows and see what this team turns into. I don't even know. I know these players pretty well, but I don't know this team that well yet, because we really haven't, turned into a team yet. We're still a bunch of individuals right now running around in the field during off-season program. But as we get to training camp, the team starts to come together. And then as you hit September, late September, that's where you can start feeling your team of where you actually are, what you really have, and kind of see it all gel together. And that's what I get excited about.
Rooting for you guys. We're huge fans. We're believers in you and the team, and looking forward to see how everybody comes together. And certainly, hopefully we'll catch a couple games here. I know you guys are out in the East Coast a couple times, and I think they're playing the team you used to like. We'll say that, the Bills, right? So I know Chargers have to be your best team now, but hopefully we'll see you on your travels. And I just want to thank you again for joining the show, and good luck this season. I really think you guys have a great shot.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was a great talk. Yeah. Some great questions, and hopefully I gave you a little bit of insight, but thanks for having me on, and I wish you luck.
Yeah. Thanks. It was super fun, Tom. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Take care. What an honor to chat with my friend, Tom Telesco. His team is well positioned to make a legitimate run at the Super Bowl this year. A few areas that stood out to me to take away and experiment with to get better, regardless if you were on a Super Bowl run or simply looking to bring out the best in yourself and people all around you. First of all, do you have a common mission? Yeah, sure. The Chargers want to win a championship. NASA wanted to get people on the moon. What is that one thing at your organization? Take time to identify what this could be for your team and see if you can get people to get excited about it. Feeling that each role is meaningful and essential to this joint mission is the secret sauce to unimaginable success. Helping people feel connected and recognized will excite people to contribute big time. I appreciate how Tom is connected with making sure all people are contributing to a bigger purpose. Now, be sure to believe in the mission and that your people know they have the untapped potential to make it happen. You might just be surprised by what actually does happen. Simultaneously, I love how Tom speaks about setting the tone for culture and how their culture gets created by everyone in the organization, where he welcomes involvement and listens to everyone's input. What a great idea to intentionally listen to what the collective ideas are throughout your whole organization. Any of us can do this. We can experiment with a simple idea by asking and inquiring what people like or would like to see improved in any culture we participate in. Be genuine and really listen in. Also, what would be your social justice message on your helmet? Tom mentioned he would have inspired change. Mine would be it takes all of us, or choose love, because my heart tells me we are all worthy of living a life as our authentic selves filled with possibilities. Take 5 minutes today and ask yourself, what would it be? Or create a new message you would want to add onto the helmet. Next, define why you chose it. Think about this each day and take action to inspire the change you want in your part of the world. Since we don't have helmets, perhaps add these to your email signature or put a sign at your desk or on your screen background to make it safe for others to do the same. Thank you again, Tom Telesco, for joining the show. Good luck this season, and go Chargers. Everyone, be sure to bolt up each day, be your happy, authentic self, and live your possible.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.